30 caretakers in 47 days. 30 terminations. 30 times Han Dong-seon, head of the Chongryong syndicate, had hired someone to keep his fragile twins breathing through another night. And 30 times they'd treated Jae-min and Era like paychecks instead of patients. So he did what any mafia boss would do. Installed hidden cameras in every corner of the nursery and monitored every dose, every cry, every person who entered his medically fragile infant's room from his secure study. Then the new nurse walked in. Foreign woman. Exhausted eyes. Dark skin that made Madame Yoon's lips thin with disapproval during the background check. She measured the twins' temperatures, repositioned their oxygen monitors, washed her hands, and then she did something that made Dong-seon lean forward in his chair. She lifted Era from her crib, cradled the baby against her chest, and pressed her cheek to the infant's forehead, whispering something he couldn't hear through the audio feed. Mr. Han, your children don't just need medical care, they need someone who sees them as human beings. You can dismiss me like the others, or you can let me show you what actual nursing looks like. The interview room smelled like sandalwood and old money, the kind of scent that clung to furniture worth more than Mireille's nursing school tuition. Han Dong-seon sat behind a desk of polished mahogany, his dark suit so immaculately fitted it seemed like a second skin designed for intimidation. You're the 31st candidate, he said, his voice flat. The longest any caretaker has lasted is 11 days. What makes you different? Because I can't afford to fail, Mr. Han, Mireille said, meeting his gaze. My father made debts to men who don't negotiate extensions, and I'm 3 months from my nursing certification. I need this position, which means I need Jae-min and Era to thrive. Our goals align. The twins are medically fragile. They require constant monitoring and exact adherence to their care protocols. No improvisation. No emotional attachments. The elevator doors opened with a whisper, revealing a hallway so wide it made Mireille's eyes ache. Marble floors. Marble walls. Even the ceiling seemed carved from stone meant to last 1,000 years. Everything in Han Dong-seon's estate whispered the same message: permanence, power, and the kind of wealth that could erase people without leaving traces. Her shoes clicked too loudly as she walked. The security guard who'd escorted her from the gate hadn't spoken a single word during the 10-minute drive through the compound. Now he stood 3 paces behind her, close enough to grab her if she ran, far enough to pretend he wasn't watching. The interview room door stood open. Inside, Han Dong-seon looked exactly like his photograph, dark hair perfectly styled, jaw sharp enough to cut glass, eyes that assessed her the way a jeweler might examine a flawed diamond. Behind him, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked a garden so meticulously pruned it looked artificial. Mireille Vale, he said, not rising from his chair. 23 years old. Third-year nursing student. Father is Elias Vale, currently residing in Manila with approximately $200,000 in gambling debts to the Santos family. Her stomach dropped. She'd known they would run a background check. She hadn't expected him to weaponize it within the first 30 seconds. Yes, she said, forcing her voice steady. That's accurate. Sit. She did. The leather chair was so soft it felt like a trap. Dong-seon slid a folder across the desk. Inside were medical charts dense with technical terminology, photographs of 2 tiny infants surrounded by monitors and tubes, and a contract so thick it could double as a murder weapon. My children were born at 28 weeks, he said. They have chronic lung disease, feeding difficulties, and immune systems that treat common colds like biological warfare. The last caretaker gave Jae-min unpasteurized formula. He spent 4 days in the hospital. The one before that fell asleep during her shift. Era stopped breathing for 47 seconds before the monitors woke her. Mireille's hands tightened on the folder. 47 seconds. Long enough for brain damage. Long enough for death. You will follow their care protocols exactly as written, Dong Xian continued. You will not deviate. You will not improvise. You will not develop opinions about their treatment. If either child's condition worsens under your care, you will be dismissed immediately. If either child dies due to your negligence, your father's debts become my concern to resolve. Do you understand what that means? She understood perfectly. It meant Elias would disappear. It meant her failure wouldn't just cost her this job, it would cost her everything. I understand, Mr. Han. Then sign the contract. Your shift begins tonight. The monitors cast blue light across Dong Xian's face as he watched the new nurse enter the nursery. 10 screens. 12 angles. Every corner of the room captured in high definition, every sound filtered through speakers sensitive enough to pick up a heartbeat. Mireille Vale moved like someone who'd done this before. She checked the temperature controls first, smart, then washed her hands for the full 30 seconds the protocol required. She reviewed the medication chart twice, her lips moving silently as she read. Professional. Competent. Exactly what the previous 30 caretakers had looked like during their first shifts. He leaned back in his chair, already composing the termination conversation he'd have in 3 days when she proved herself just as useless as the others. Then she approached Jaemin's crib. The boy was awake, his tiny face scrunched in that pre-cry expression that usually escalated into screaming within seconds. Mireille reached in, adjusted his oxygen cannula with practiced fingers, checked the feeding tube taped to his cheek. Standard procedure. But instead of stepping back to record her observations like the protocol demanded, she gathered him into her arms. Hey, little warrior, she whispered, so softly Dong Xian had to turn up the volume. I know. I know everything hurts. She settled into the rocking chair, cradling Jaemin against her chest. Her hand moved in slow circles across his back, gentle enough not to disturb the monitor wires, firm enough to provide comfort. The baby's whimpering quieted. His small fist curled against her collar. Your dad's watching us right now, you know, Mireille continued, her voice carrying that sing-song quality people used with infants. Probably thinking I'm breaking protocol. Maybe I am. But you don't need another nurse who treats you like a checklist. You need someone who remembers you're a person. Dong Xian's jaw tightened. She knew about the cameras. Of course she did, he'd mentioned the security measures in the contract. But knowing she was being watched and addressing it directly were different things entirely. Era began to fuss in the neighboring crib. Mireille stood carefully, still holding Jaemin, and crossed to his sister. She managed to scoop Era up with her free arm, somehow balancing both infants against her chest without tangling their monitor wires. There we go, she murmured. Both of you. That's better, isn't it? It was reckless. Inefficient. The protocol explicitly stated to handle the twins separately to minimize cross-contamination risk. But as Dong Xian watched both his children settle against this stranger's heartbeat, their breathing synchronizing, their tiny bodies finally relaxing, he didn't reach for the phone to call security. Instead, he sat in the darkness and watched a foreign woman with tired eyes hold his children like they were made of something precious instead of something broken. And for the first time in 47 days, both twins slept through the night. Mireille's third night began like the previous two. Check vitals. Record temperatures. Verify oxygen levels. Prepare the midnight feeding. She moved through the nursery with the efficiency of someone who'd memorized every step, every measurement, every rule in Dong Xian's 30-page protocol. The formula sat in its usual place, pre-measured bottles arranged in the medical refrigerator, each labeled with precise feeding times. She pulled out the one marked midnight, tested the temperature against her wrist, and brought it to Jaemin's crib. He took the bottle reluctantly, his small mouth working against the nipple like it caused him pain. 3 minutes in, he turned his head away and whimpered. The same pattern as every feeding she'd witnessed. The same pattern, she realized with growing unease, that had landed him in the hospital 4 weeks ago. She set the bottle on the counter and picked up heirs. Same resistance. Same discomfort. Both twins treated feeding like punishment instead of nourishment. Something wasn't right. Mireya unscrewed the cap from Jamin's bottle and brought it to her nose. The smell hit her immediately, sharp, chemical, wrong. Formula was supposed to smell faintly sweet, like milk and vitamins. This smelled acidic, like something had oxidized or broken down in ways it shouldn't. Her nursing instructor's voice echoed in her memory, "Trust your senses. If something smells off, it probably is." She checked the expiration date. Still valid. Checked the seal. Unbroken. But the scent didn't lie, and neither did the twins' reactions. Whatever was in these bottles was making them worse, not better. The camera in the corner seemed to watch her more intently. She could feel Dong Xian's eyes through the lens, waiting for her to make the mistake that would justify her dismissal. 30 caretakers before her. 30 people who'd followed the protocol exactly and failed anyway. Mireya walked to the counter, picked up both bottles, and poured them down the sink. Then she opened the refrigerator and systematically emptied every pre-measured container into the drain. 6 bottles. 12 hours of carefully portioned formula. Thousands of dollars worth of specialized nutrition prescribed by the twins' medical team. Gone. She turned to face the camera directly, her heart hammering against her ribs. This was it. The moment Dong Xian would storm through the door, terminate her contract, and make her father's debts his personal project. "Mr. Han," she said to the lens, keeping her voice steady despite the fear clawing up her throat. "Whatever's in that formula is poisoning your children. You can fire me right now like you did the others, or you can trust me for one night and see if I'm right." Silence filled the nursery. The monitors beeped. The twins breathed. And somewhere in the darkness, Han Dong-Xian sat behind his screens and made a choice that would change everything. The door didn't open. The intercom crackled to life. Dong-Xian's voice filled the nursery, cold and measured as winter steel. "Explain." Mireya didn't flinch. She'd already crossed the line, might as well sprint past it. She picked up one of the empty bottles from the counter and held it toward the camera. "When did Jamin's hospital admission happen?" 4 weeks ago?" Silence. "Then, 28 days. "And what symptoms did he present with?" "Vomiting. Respiratory distress. Elevated heart rate." Each word came out clipped, dangerous. The caretaker had given him unpasteurized formula. "No," Mireya said firmly. "She gave him this formula. The same one that's been making both twins progressively sicker since birth. Smell it yourself, Mr. Han. It's not supposed to smell like battery acid." She watched the camera, imagining Dong Xian in his surveillance room, jaw clenched, fingers probably already reaching for the phone to call security. Instead, she heard footsteps through the intercom. Fast. Purposeful. Coming closer. The nursery door burst open 30 seconds later. Dong Xian strode in wearing the same immaculate suit from 3 days ago, though his tie was loosened now, top button undone. He looked like a man who hadn't slept since hiring her. His eyes went first to the twins, both alive, both breathing, then to the empty bottles lined up on the counter like evidence at a crime scene. He grabbed the nearest one and brought it to his nose. His expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes. Recognition. Or maybe fury. "Who prepared these bottles?" His voice was quieter now. "More lethal. They come pre-made from the pharmaceutical supplier," Mireya said. "According to the logs, the same company has been providing the twins' formula since they came home from the NICU. Every batch, every shipment, for 3 months." Dong Xian set the bottle down with deliberate care, The kind of control that suggested he wanted to throw it through the window. You're telling me someone has been poisoning my children for 3 months, and 30 trained caretakers never noticed. They were following protocol, Mireya said. The protocol says use the pre-measured formula. Don't deviate. Don't question. They did exactly what they were told. And you didn't. No, Mr. Han. I didn't. He turned to face her fully, and for the first time since she'd entered his fortress of marble and money, Mireya saw past the Mafia boss exterior. Saw the father underneath. The man who'd watched 28 people fail his children while he sat helpless behind his screens. The pharmaceutical supplier, he said, each word sharp as a blade. Does the name appear anywhere in the contract documentation? Yun Medical Supply, Mireya read from the chart. Signed and approved by Madam Yun Huayang. Dong Xian's smile was terrible. My stepmother. Dong Xian should have left the nursery. Should have returned to his office to make the calls that would end Madam Yun's existence by sunrise. Instead, he stood frozen in the doorway, watching Mireya move through the space like she'd been caring for his children for years instead of days. She'd switched to backup formula, the emergency supply kept sealed in the medical cabinet for situations exactly like this. Jaemin had taken 4 ounces without fussing. Era, 5. Both had kept it down. You should sleep, Mireya said without turning around. I'll wake you if anything changes. I don't sleep. The words came out harsher than he'd intended. She glanced over her shoulder, and something in her expression made his chest tighten. Not pity. Understanding. Neither do I. Not really. Not since this started. She lifted Era from her crib, then crossed to gather Jaemin. Both twins came willingly, their tiny bodies molding against hers as she settled into the rocking chair. She arranged them carefully, Era against her left shoulder, Jaemin against her right, their faces pressed to the bare skin of her neck where she'd unbuttoned her collar. Skin-to-skin contact, she explained, catching his stare. It regulates their breathing, stabilizes their heart rates. The textbooks call it kangaroo care, but really it just means letting them remember they're not alone. Dong Xian leaned against the doorframe, unable to look away. His children. His dying, fragile children who'd been steadily slipping away despite every expert, every protocol, every desperate measure. Now they breathed in sync with a stranger's heartbeat, peaceful in ways he hadn't seen since before their mother died giving birth to them. Mireya began to hum. Low and soft, a melody he didn't recognize. Then words emerged, gentle as prayer. Hush little warrior, don't you cry, mama's gonna sing you a lullaby, and if that lullaby won't do, mama's gonna stay right here with you. Not mama. She wasn't their mother. She was an employee. A temporary solution. Someone who'd be gone the moment her father's debts were paid or the twins no longer needed round-the-clock care. But Jaemin's fingers curled against her skin like she was something permanent. Era's breathing deepened into actual sleep, not the restless half-consciousness that usually passed for rest. And Dong Xian, the dragon of Chongryong, the man who'd built an empire on fear and calculated violence, felt something crack open in his chest. They've never. His voice came out rough. In 3 months, I've never seen them this calm. Mireya looked up, and in the blue glow of the monitors, her eyes were impossibly gentle. That's because everyone else was afraid of breaking them. But your children don't need people who are afraid. They need people who love them anyway. You barely know them. I know enough. She adjusted Era's position slightly. I know they're fighters. I know they deserve better than what they've been given. And I know you're terrified of losing them. He should have denied it. Should have retreated behind his armor of control and power. Instead, Han Dong Xian did something he hadn't done since the night his wife died. He stayed. Mireya encountered her on the 3rd-floor hallway at dawn. She'd left the nursery only to retrieve fresh linens from the supply closet, leaving Dong Xian watching over the sleeping twins with an expression that looked like he'd forgotten how to leave. The woman materialized from the shadows like she'd been waiting. Older, elegant, wearing a silk robe that probably cost more than Mireille's entire education. Her hair was perfectly styled despite the early hour, her makeup flawless, her smile sharp enough to draw blood. "So you're the new one," Madame Yun Huayang said, her voice honeyed poison. "The foreign girl my stepson has taken such an interest in." Mireille's grip tightened on the linens. "I'm the twins' nurse. Nothing more." "Of course." Madame Yun stepped closer, her perfume overwhelming in the narrow hallway. Jasmine and something darker underneath. "Tell me, Miss Vale, how is your father? Still in Manila, I presume? Still enjoying the Santos family's hospitality?" Ice flooded Mireille's veins. "How do you?" "I make it my business to know everything about the people who enter this house." Madame Yun's smile widened. "Elias Vale. 200,000 in debts. 3 broken fingers so far. The Santos family is growing impatient, I hear. They've been asking about collateral." The thread hung in the air between them, unspoken but crystal clear. "The twins seem healthier this morning," Madame Yun continued, examining her manicured nails. "I noticed the formula bottles in the disposal. Such a waste. That's specialized nutrition, you understand. Very expensive. Very carefully calibrated. It was making them sick." "Was it?" Those eyes, cold, calculating, fixed on Mireille like a scientist observing an insect. "Or perhaps you simply wanted to make yourself indispensable? Create a crisis, then solve it? I've seen that strategy before. Young women who think they can secure their futures by becoming necessary to desperate men." Mireille's pulse hammered in her throat, but she forced her voice steady. "I'm here to care for Jamin and Era. That's all. And you're doing such a wonderful job." Madame Yun reached out, her fingers ghosting across Mireille's shoulder in a gesture that might have looked maternal to anyone watching. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "But accidents happen in nurseries, don't they? Monitors malfunction. Feeding tubes kink. And when they do, we need someone to blame. Someone, expendable." She stepped back, smile returning to full brilliance. "My stepson is very attached to those children. Understandable, given they're all he has left of my poor deceased daughter-in-law. If anything were to happen to them, I don't think he'd be very forgiving. Not to the person responsible." Madame Yun glided past, her robe whispering against the marble floor. At the end of the hallway, she paused. "Do continue with your excellent care, Miss Vale. And remember, this house has eyes everywhere. Even where you least expect them." Then she was gone, leaving Mireille alone in the hallway with linens clutched against her chest and the sudden, terrifying certainty that the enemy had never been outside the walls. The enemy lived inside them. Mireille returned to the nursery with her hands still trembling from the hallway encounter. She pushed open the door expecting to find Dong Xian gone, back to his surveillance room, back to his empire of screens and shadows. Instead, he was dragging a leather chair across the floor. Not into the nursery. To its entrance. He positioned it against the doorframe with deliberate precision, angling it so he could see both the hallway and the cribs inside. Then he sat, arms crossed, jaw set like carved granite. "Mr. Han," Mireille said carefully. "You don't need to." "I do." 2 words. Final as a door slamming shut. She approached slowly, linen still clutched against her chest. "Did something happen?" His eyes tracked the hallway beyond, cold and watchful. "My head of security just informed me that the surveillance footage from this wing has been experiencing technical difficulties. Convenient gaps in coverage. Always during night shifts. Always in the corridors leading to the nursery. Mireille's blood went cold. Madame Yoon's words echoed in her mind, this house has eyes everywhere. Someone's been tampering with the cameras, she said. Someone with access to the security room. Someone who's been in this house long enough to know every blind spot, every vulnerability. Dong Xian's fingers drummed against the chair arm, the only sign of the fury simmering beneath his controlled exterior. Someone who signed the contract with Yoon Medical Supply. Your stepmother. My late father's widow. He said it like a curse. Who stands to inherit controlling interest in the syndicate if my children don't survive to adulthood? Korean succession law is very clear on these matters. The pieces assembled themselves in Mireille's mind with horrible clarity. The poisoned formula. The convenient camera malfunctions. 28 previous caretakers who'd all mysteriously failed. And now Madame Yoon's threat in the hallway, delivered with a smile that promised violence wrapped in plausible deniability. She approached me this morning, Mireille said quietly. In the hallway. She knew about my father. About the Santos family. Dong Xian's expression didn't change, but something lethal flickered behind his eyes. What did she say? That accidents happen in nurseries. That monitors malfunction. That you'd need someone to blame when they do. The silence that followed was so heavy Mireille could barely breathe through it. Then Dong Xian stood, walked to the nursery closet, and returned with a second chair. He set it beside his own. You'll need somewhere to sit during breaks, he said. I assume you take breaks? Sometimes. Not often. Take them here. He settled back into his chair, a sentinel at the gate. From now on, when you're not with the twins, you're within my line of sight. No more hallway trips alone. No more supply runs unescorted. You're assigning yourself as my bodyguard? I'm protecting my assets. But the way he looked at her suggested she'd become something more than just another employee. All of them. The storm arrived at 2:47 a.m. like an omen. Thunder cracked across the estate so violently the windows rattled in their frames. Rain hammered the glass and sheets, turning the manicured gardens into a blurred watercolor of darkness. Mireille looked up from checking Era's vitals, unease crawling up her spine. It's just weather, Dong Xian said from his post at the door, but his hand had moved to his phone. Lightning split the sky. For one brilliant second, the nursery blazed white, monitors, cribs, Dong Xian's tense silhouette against the doorframe. Then darkness swallowed everything. The power was gone. Emergency lights flickered on immediately, bathing the room in dim red. The twins' monitor switched to battery backup with a series of urgent beeps. But through the doorway, Mireille could see the hallway had gone completely black. No emergency lighting. No backup systems. That's not protocol, Dong Xian said, already moving. He pulled a handgun from beneath his jacket with the fluid ease of someone who'd done it 1,000 times. Emergency power should have engaged throughout the entire wing. His phone lit up with incoming calls. He answered without taking his eyes off the hallway. Report. Mireille couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but she watched Dong Xian's expression harden into something terrifying. The main generator? A pause. Both backup systems? Simultaneously? Another pause, longer this time. How many? He ended the call and turned to Mireille. His voice was calm, too calm, the kind of calm that came before violence. Someone cut the power to this wing. The security team is reporting armed individuals entering through the east gate. 6 men, possibly more. They have the access codes. Madame Yoon. Madame Yoon. He moved to the nursery windows, peering through the rain-soaked glass toward the gardens below. The storm provides cover. No cameras. No electronic locks. No alarms. Just men with guns and a stepmother who's tired of waiting for nature to solve her inheritance problem. Another crack of thunder, this one close enough to feel in Mireille's chest. Through the lightning flash, she saw movement in the gardens. Dark figures spreading out across the grounds, moving with military precision toward the main house. Toward them. "We need to move the twins," Mireille said, already reaching for Jaemin's portable oxygen. "There's a service elevator. Disabled. Along with every other exit route." Dong Xian checked his weapons magazine, then pulled a second gun from an ankle holster. He held it out to her. "Do you know how to use this?" Mireille stared at the gun like it was a venomous snake. "I'm a nurse." "You're about to be a lot more than that." He pressed the weapon into her hands. "Safety off. Point. Squeeze. Anyone comes through that door who isn't my security team, you shoot them. Understand?" The twins began to cry, sensing the tension crackling through the air. The storm raged outside. Armed men moved through the darkness below. And somewhere in this marble fortress, Madame Yun was sitting in her chambers, waiting for news that her stepson's children had finally, tragically, succumbed to the chaos. Dong Xian positioned himself at the door, weapon raised. "Welcome to the family business, Miss Vale." The monitors died 30 seconds later. Not the gentle shutdown of a planned power loss. A sudden, complete failure that killed every beep, every readout, every digital lifeline keeping Jaemin and Era stable. The backup batteries should have lasted 4 hours minimum. Someone had sabotaged them. "No," Mireille breathed, rushing to Jaemin's crib. His oxygen cannula had gone dark. The flow meter read 0. She checked Era's, same thing. Both twins' primary respiratory support had just vanished in the middle of a thunderstorm with armed men approaching through the gardens. Jaemin's breathing turned shallow within seconds. Era's lips began losing color. "Dong Xian," Mireille said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "The oxygen system is completely down. I need the manual resuscitation bags. Now." He was beside her in 2 strides, yanking open the emergency supply cabinet. He thrust 2 bag valve masks into her hands, infant-sized, thank God, while keeping his gun trained on the doorway. Mireille grabbed Jaemin first. His skin was already taking on that grayish tinge that meant oxygen deprivation. She positioned the mask over his tiny nose and mouth, creating a seal with one hand while squeezing the bag with the other. 1 breath every 3 seconds. Textbook rhythm. Except textbooks didn't account for having to do this for 2 infants simultaneously while people with guns hunted you in the dark. Squeeze. Release. Squeeze. Release. Jaemin's chest rose and fell. But Era was gasping now, her small body fighting for air it couldn't get. "I can't do both," Mireille said, the words tearing out of her. "I need another pair of hands." Dong Xian holstered his weapon and dropped to his knees beside Era's crib. "Show me." Mask over her face. "Seal it tight. Squeeze the bag once every 3 seconds. Watch her chest, if it doesn't rise, adjust the seal." Mireille demonstrated with Jaemin while tracking Era from the corner of her eye. "Too much pressure and you'll damage her lungs. Too little and she won't get enough oxygen." His hands shook as he positioned the mask. The dragon of Chongryong, steady in gunfights and boardroom warfare, trembling as he held his daughter's life in his palms. "Like this? Perfect. Keep going. Don't stop." They fell into rhythm, a terrible, desperate synchronization. Squeeze. Release. Count to 3. Squeeze. Release. Thunder crashed overhead. Rain battered the windows. Somewhere in the house, footsteps echoed through darkened hallways, growing closer. Jaemin's color began to improve. Then Era's. Both babies breathing because 2 people refused to let them stop. "How long can we do this?" Dong Xian asked, his voice hoarse. Mireia squeezed Jamin's bag again, her arms already burning from the repetitive motion. As long as we have to. Through the nursery door, she heard the unmistakable sound of boots on marble. Multiple sets. Moving with purpose. Dong Xian's free hand moved back to his gun. And they kept breathing for the twins who couldn't breathe for themselves. The footsteps stopped outside the nursery door. Dong Xian set down heirs' resuscitation bag with aching reluctance, his eyes meeting Mireia's across the dim red emergency lighting. She was already moving, gathering both bags, positioning herself between the cribs so she could reach both twins. "I've got them," she said. "Go." He drew his weapon and moved to the door just as a voice called from the hallway. Familiar. One of his own security team. "Mr. Han, we need to evacuate you. The compound has been breached." Dong Xian's finger rested against the trigger guard. "Who authorized entry through the east gate, Minjun?" Silence. Then, "Sir, we don't have time for." The access codes were changed 3 days ago. Only 5 people have the new sequence. Me. My head of security. And 3 team leaders. Dong Xian's voice carried that lethal calm again. "You're not one of them, Minjun. So who gave you the codes?" The silence stretched longer this time. Behind him, Mireia maintained her rhythm, squeeze, count, keeping both twins alive through sheer determination and burning muscles. "We're coming in, Mr. Han. For your protection. You'll die in this doorway. There are 6 of us. You have 1 gun and a foreign nurse. Be reasonable." Dong Xian smiled without humor. "I haven't been reasonable since someone tried to poison my children. Come through that door and find out exactly how unreasonable I can be." Movement in the hallway. Whispered conversation. Then Minjun's voice again, harder now. "Madam Yun offers you a choice. Surrender the twins to medical evacuation. We'll take them somewhere safe until the compound is secure. You and the nurse can leave unharmed." Medical evacuation. Dong Xian's laugh was sharp as broken glass. "To the same medical supplier that's been poisoning them for 3 months. Tell my stepmother I have a counteroffer. She can leave Korea before sunrise, or I'll make sure she doesn't leave at all." Gunfire answered him. The first shot splintered the doorframe. Dong Xian was already moving, dropping to a combat stance, returning fire through the gap. Muzzle flashes lit the hallway like strobe lights. Someone screamed. A body hit the floor. "Mireia, down." Dong Xian barked. She was already on the floor, curled over both cribs, her body a human shield while her hands never stopped working the resuscitation bags. Squeeze. Count. Squeeze. Count. Bullets punctured the walls above her head, and she just kept breathing for the twins. Dong Xian fired 3 more shots. Another body dropped. But there were still 4 men in that hallway, and he had maybe 6 rounds left. "Last chance, Mr. Han," Minjun called. "We just want the children. Then you'll have to kill me first." That, Minjun said, was always the plan. The real assault began. The door exploded inward. Not from gunfire, from a battering ram one of the guards must have retrieved from the security office. The heavy wood splintered off its hinges, crashing into the nursery with enough force to shake the floor. 2 men poured through the opening, weapons raised. Dong Xian took the first one down with a headshot. The second got off 3 rounds before Dong Xian's bullet caught him in the shoulder, spinning him backwards into the hallway. But the third man was already inside, his gun tracking toward the cribs where Mireia crouched over the twins. She didn't think. Just grabbed the weapon Dong Xian had given her earlier and fired. The recoil nearly broke her wrist. The shot went wide, punching through the wall 2 feet left of her target. But it was enough to make the guard dive for cover, giving Dong Xian the opening he needed. His next shot didn't miss. Silence fell. 3 bodies in the nursery. 2 more in the hallway. 1 guard, Min-jun, probably, retreating down the corridor, his footsteps fading into the storm's thunder. Mireille's hands were already back on the resuscitation bags before the last body stopped twitching. Squeeze Jaemin's bag. Count to 3. Squeeze Era's bag. Count to 3. Her arms screamed in protest. She'd been doing this for 10 minutes straight. It felt like hours. Then Era's bag wouldn't compress. Mireille squeezed harder. Nothing. The valve had jammed, debris from the door explosion, or a manufacturing defect, or just cruel timing. Didn't matter. What mattered was Era's chest had stopped rising, and her lips were turning blue again. Dong-xian. Panic cracked through Mireille's voice. Era's bag failed, I need. He was beside her instantly, his hands still shaking from adrenaline and gunfire. Tell me what to do. Take Jaemin's bag. Keep him breathing. I'll do mouth-to-mouth for Era. He grabbed the working resuscitator while Mireille lifted Era from her crib. The baby was so small, so impossibly fragile. Her skin felt cold. Her chest barely moved. Mireille tilted Era's head back, pinched her tiny nose, and sealed her mouth over the infant's. One gentle breath. Watched for the chest to rise. Another breath. The textbook said 2 rescue breaths per minute for infants, but textbooks didn't account for babies whose lungs were already compromised, whose oxygen saturation had been dropping for minutes. Come on, little warrior, Mireille whispered between breaths. Your father just killed 5 men for you. You don't get to quit now. Era's chest rose. Fell. Rose again, on its own this time. A small cough. Then a whimper. Then the most beautiful sound Mireille had ever heard, a baby crying with fury and indignation at being alive. Dong-xian's hand stilled on Jaemin's bag. His eyes found Mireille's across the wreckage of the nursery, bullet holes in the walls, bodies on the floor, emergency lights painting everything the color of blood. You saved her, he said. We saved her, Mireille corrected, still cradling Era against her chest. Both of them. Outside, sirens wailed through the storm. Real security this time. The loyal ones. But in the ruins of the nursery, 2 people who'd started as employer and employee held on to the twins they'd kept alive through poison, sabotage, and bullets. And neither of them was letting go. The compound secured by dawn. Madame Yoon was gone, fled to Busan with whatever cash she could grab before Dong-xian's loyal men surrounded her chambers. Min-jun and 2 other compromised guards were in custody. The bodies had been removed from the nursery, the bullet holes hastily patched, the emergency power restored. But the cameras stayed dark. Mireille noticed it first when she looked up from changing Jaemin's diaper. The red recording lights that had tracked her every movement for 9 days were dead. Not just powered off, physically removed. Empty brackets remained where the lenses had been. Dong-xian stood in the doorway, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. I had them taken out, he said quietly. All of them. Every camera in this wing. Why? Because you deserve privacy. Because my children deserve a home, not a surveillance state. He stepped into the nursery, and Mireille saw he was carrying something. Papers. And because this, he held up her employment contract, was never the right arrangement. He walked to the small fireplace in the corner, the decorative one that had never been lit in all her time here. With deliberate ceremony, he set the contract inside and pulled a lighter from his pocket. The papers caught immediately, curling into ash. Mr. Han, what are you? Dong-xian, he interrupted. After last night, I think we're past formalities. The contract burned to nothing. He turned to face her fully, and Mireille's breath caught because the dragon of Chongryong looked almost nervous. I need to contact the Santos family, he said. Your father's debts. I'm buying them out. Full payment plus interest. Elias will be free by the end of the week. Mireille nearly dropped the clean diaper. You can't, that's 200,000. It's nothing. He said it like he meant it. What I can't do is keep you here under duress. Can't ask you to stay because you're trapped. Can't. He paused, jaw working. Can't offer you what I want to offer if you're only here because you have no choice. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small box. Velvet. Expensive. The kind that held things that changed lives. This isn't a proposal, Dong Xian said quickly. Not yet. Not when you barely had time to process everything that's happened. But it's a promise. He opened the box. Inside sat a ring, simple, elegant, a single diamond that caught the morning light. When you're ready. When your father is safe and you've had time to think clearly. When you can choose freely instead of out of necessity. I want you to know that this is waiting. Mireille stared at the ring, then at him, then at Jaemin and Era sleeping peacefully in their cribs, alive because she'd refused to let them die. You're asking me to be their mother. I'm asking you to be part of this family. However that looks. Whatever that means. His voice softened. The twins already love you. And I. He didn't finish. Didn't need to. Mireille crossed the nursery and took his hand, not the one holding the ring, but his free hand, scarred from violence and gentle with his children. Ask me again, she said, when the storms have passed. When your house is truly safe. When I've finished my nursing degree and can stand beside you as an equal, not an employee you saved. Dong Xian smiled. Real this time. Warm. I'll wait, he promised. However long it takes. Outside, the sun rose over the marble fortress. Inside, a family began to heal.